Hello. We're going to start the program in just a minute. I just need to get a show of hands. I don't know everyone here. Is Thomas Donahue here? Thomas? Great. Okay. Alexis is here. Alexis, you here? Yes, you were. Yeah, good. And Mikaela, where are you? Good. Yeah. And Rachel is here. And Jim, where are you? Jim? No? Okay. Eleora? Great. Okay, thank you. And Zach, I saw. Where are you, Zach? Yeah, right. And Kate is here. Good, yeah. This is like attendance, right? In class or something, right? All right. Anyway, Diane is here, yes. Christopher is here. Christopher made it back, yes. And Sherbie. Sherbie, where are you? Sherbie? Sherbie? No? Okay. And Joanne is here, right? I just saw Joanne, yeah. And Jennifer is here as well. Okay. So there might be a little switching around. If I have to get up and tell someone to just come up and read, that's fine. It's a very informal event. My name is Neal Dwyer. I help to put on the literary programs here at the College of Southern Maryland. And if you don't know, we do. We have at least three readings a semester. And if you want to go on the website, it's on the inside cover, I think, still. Maybe, yeah, it's at the beginning. It's csmd.edu/connections. You can look at the lineup. We had a playwright in October, a poet in November, and now it's sort of the community showcase. People, students, faculty, members of the community, and it's a great occasion for us to bring the community of writers and photographers and artists together here at CSM twice a year, once in December, and then again we'll do it in May at the end of the spring semester. So welcome. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this, the last of the three readings this fall term. I can't do this alone. I would like you to just, with me, turn to the table of contents, and on the left side is a list of people who help us put this magazine out. So if I could just ask for a round of applause for the people that helped put this out. And it's not for us, and when you're applauding, it's not for the people, the individuals that do this, nor for the college. It's the community of people that we're able to bring together. And I do think it's important. I do know that it's important to people who like to write, who like to read, and it's our pleasure to provide the forum, not only in print, but like this as a community each semester. So thank you for coming. The format, as I said, is very informal, and basically, you can come up. Does everybody have a card? I mean, if you don't, let me know, because that does have the order, and there's no reason to this order. It's just it's random. But you come up, and if you want to talk a little bit about how the piece came to be, that's fine. Or if you just want to read it, that's fine too. Okay? So sit back and enjoy the evening of poems and stories, and we'll have these wonderful pictures turning throughout the program. I'm going to start with one that I wrote. It's called A Walk in the Woods. I beheld an image and prayed I could receive the words to convey its mood and emotional meaning, so that someone else could feel as I did, alive. If I were a poet, I would listen with my better ear, hear the words drop like leaves from rain-soaked limbs to puddle, pond, and pine bed, and from them craft a poem to breathe life back into the mood, into the moment, into the image that has only just now passed before my eyes. Thank you. And thanks. Thomas, you're up.
Hey, everybody. This is a short story I wrote called Smoke. I'm going to read it now. There was something about the first cool fall breeze, carrying a certain crisp quality that seemed to fill the nostrils and lungs to the point of bursting, which made Milton crave a cigarette. Milton reflected on why that was as he pulled out a cigarette on his walk home. He pauses to flick the lighter, staring at the glorious flame for a moment before lighting what would be, if he kept count, his 17th cigarette that day. For him, smoking was more than a habit or an addiction. There was a quality to the winking, fiery ember at the tip that transfixed him. Anytime he lit a cigarette, it was like creating a new life form which danced and played just inches from his face. It breathed because he breathed. He was essentially its life giver, its God. He liked to pretend that he was creating some sort of fairy or a sprite that could only live in a flame. Whenever he put out a cigarette, a minute ripple of sadness would come over him, unnoticed by even himself. If anything, his only reaction would be to crave another. These fiery sprites of his, which only he seemed to notice or even care about, were the only form of control he had in his life. He was painfully reminded by this fact as he sat at dinner with his family, at a table strewn with lumpy mashed potatoes, carelessly prepared peas, dry dinner rolls, and a ham. He hated dinner there. It hated eating, really. However, to say so out loud would be blasphemy against Mrs. Milton. Regardless, it was very rarely that Milton talked at the dinner table any which way. Mr. Milton crumpled his copy of the Lancaster Daily and huffed in frustration as he sat at the table. The sudden gust of wind disturbed a fly from its perch, only for a moment, before zipping back down to the table. "What is it, dear?" asked Mrs. Milton out of no particular interest. "It's that damned union again. They're doing everything in their power to undermine and take down the mill. They can't even begin to understand how this strike will affect them." Mr. Milton's face crumpled like his newspaper into a frown as he spooned more and more potatoes onto his plate. "It's almost as if they'd be happy if the whole damn place burned down, with every last one of them still trapped inside." Mrs. Milton smiled politely. "Oh, I'm sure it'll all be fine. You know how these things go," she said reassuringly, and hoping that he did know how these things went, because the hell if he did. Little Sally Milton skipped into the dining room and over to her chair. "Where have you been?" asked Mr. Milton as he smoothed out the crumpled newspaper before folding it. "Sorry, Daddy. I've just been trying to figure out what I should wear to the spring fling on Friday. Oh, I'm just torn between this beautiful black lacy thing or that blue gown. You know, the one you got me last Christmas?" "Oh, that's a beautiful one. The one with the flower, right?" Mrs. Milton asked, bursting at her seams at her daughter's youth. I thought of she herself slipping into that delicate gown. Mr. Milton merely grunted and asked, in between tremendous bites, "You still going with that Edwards boy?" "Tommy?" Sally Milton seemed to ooze a certain air of pleasure and even superiority at the mention of his name. "Why, of course I am." Mr. Milton simply nodded, spooning yet another pile of potatoes onto his plate. The dinner rolls began to grow cold as the fly on the table grew more and more adventurous with its advances towards the food. The setting sun outside cast a golden light along the side of the Milton's house, sending rays leaping in through the windows. Milton wanted, more than anything, to smoke a cigarette. "May I please be excused?" he asked after a time. "What?" Mr. Milton looked up from his plate. "Oh, yes. Sure. Oh, wait. You're still helping me and Mr. Dean move that old jalopy out of his yard tomorrow, right?" Milton paused to consider this, as if he had an option. "Yes, sir." "Good man." Mr. Milton smiled widely and returned to his potatoes. Milton walked outside and immediately lit a cigarette, once again bringing life into a fiery little sprite to play with. He stared out at the sun, dipping down into the Deans' field. It seemed to be casting fire upon the untilled growth, surrounding the tall blades of grass with a luminous quality, not unlike his cigarettes. Without thinking, he began to walk out into the glowing field. He was disappointed to find that the more and more he walked out into the field, the more the grass lost its amber sheen. Milton looked up. It was obvious that he would just have to walk towards the sun, maybe even into the sun. He lit another cigarette as he strode west. The sun was abandoning him now. It was urgent that he pick up his pace, that he jog, no, sprint towards the sun and find the spot on the earth where it would crash down. Crickets chirped nonchalantly off in the distance. The first stars began to poke through the veil of the night sky. Milton gave up, lighting another cigarette, as the shimmering face of a moon took the place of the sun. Milton wheezed pathetically and laid down in the tall grass, just staring up at the night sky and smoking, blanketed by the tall, browning grass. Moments later, he calmly drifted off to sleep. Milton had a wonderful dream. Truly a fantastical dream. He was on the sun with his sprite friends, and all of them were there, each and every one that he's ever created. They were all together, dancing and frolicking amongst the flames. Milton laughed and laughed and laughed like he had never done before. He didn't even have the urge for a cigarette until he woke up, covered in a fine mist of dew. Milton had no idea what time it was, just that it was very late. He lit another cigarette as he began walking back. He shamefully snuffed it out as he reached his yard. There was something welling up inside of him, something strange and sad and unique. He almost thought that he could hear one of his sprite friends asking why he had to kill them all the time. Milton paused. He began to wonder the same thing himself. Why do you have to go? I don't ever want you to leave, Milton said to the still night air as he lit yet another cigarette. We don't have to, whispered the newly birthed sprite. That was when Milton got an idea. The best idea he's ever had. He went out into the decrepit old tool shed in the corner of the yard, rustling around for a moment amongst old tires, rusty tools, empty beer cans, and the like. He came back with a gallon of gasoline, carefully spreading it all along the perimeter and outside walls of the house. He took great care to make sure it reached up along its faded shingles and around the chipped green front door. Then, before it was too late, he tossed his beloved friend upon the nearest puddle of gasoline. My, oh my, did Milton's friend dance to life. Thank you so much, Milton. The fire seemed to roar. Milton cried for a moment, but only for a moment. He spent the rest of the night dancing with his new friend. Thank you.
Hi guys. My name is Alexis. I wrote the poem with you, but I feel like I have to share some stuff about my life before I read it. So 2017, I started writing poetry a lot because I cleverly named the year as the year that has tried to kill me off. So a little bit about that. The beginning of January, I had to relive my sexual assault that happened 3.5 years ago. In the middle of January, I was diagnosed with bladder cancer. In March, I was told I was infertile and I could never have children. In May, I got my heart broken. From June to August, I spent various trips to hospitals and mental health and behavioral health units. In September, I was told that I had pre-cancerous cells in my cervix. And in October, a deer totaled my car. And in November, I got accepted into the school that I wanted to get accepted into, but unfortunately, I can't afford it, so I can't go. So 2017 has really inspired my poetry because I literally just put a bunch of events that happened into one poem. And this poem mainly particularly goes towards my heartbreak, but also to being diagnosed as being infertile. So I'm going to read it now for you. So with you, the flowers in me grew. With every touch they flourished. I fed them, watered them, and through you they got sunlight. Now that you're gone, I hardly feed them. They never get water, and they grow into the weeds that I no longer pick. And that's it.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Mikaela Pollard, and the name of the story that I'm about to read is called How Winter Feels. It's a story about a young orphan girl who once has a desire to see snow for the first time, and her getting that wish. She grew up poor and abandoned on the streets of southern Sudan. Her parents she never knew. She had been an orphan for as long as she could remember, with no place to call her own. Her name was Fatima. Her earliest memories were begging for food. Her belly constantly ached with hunger. Deserted, alone, and no place to call her own, Fatima slept on the dirty streets of Al Fashir as people passed her by. Yet, Fatima dreamed. She dreamed of being a princess in a castle far, far away from the abject poverty surrounding her. She dreamed of being a normal child with parents, food, and a place to lay her head. But most of all, Fatima dreamed of winter. The Sudan sun burned with a fervent heat, and very rarely was there so much as a cool breeze. She'd had dreams of miles and miles of white. She didn't realize this was snow. She'd never seen snow before in real life, but she had read of it in books. Fatima had taught herself to read at the age of 5. Ever since then, she had fallen in love with reading. She read stories of fairies and ice princesses. However, none of the fairies or ice princesses looked like her. Her dark skin contrasted with the icy white skin of the female protagonists. So, she colored their faces brown with crayons she'd find lying on the ground. And so she imagined that she was a beautiful, intelligent princess with the world at her feet. This would only last for a moment before the stark reality sunk in. She was a poor, lowly orphan with no family and no hope. Who would ever love a poor orphan child? She could barely eat enough food to satisfy her belly. She was far from being a princess, but that would all change through an unexpected turn of events. America, freedom. These words were constantly on the lips of people passing by. She heard, "I hear anyone can become wealthy in America," one man said. Another man said, "Even poor chaps like us. Just think of how much money we make doing this in America," an old, wrinkled washerwoman said to another old, wrinkled washerwoman. Surely Fatima could be a princess only in America. If she stayed in Sudan, she would remain a pauper. She would be an ice princess like the ice princesses she loved to read about. She'd never have her own castle high up in the mountains, or she'd have her own castle high up in the mountains, just like the imaginary castles in her storybooks. Then she would see how winter felt. The missionaries came in the middle of summer, the hottest time of the year in Sudan. To add to that, there was a serious drought, resulting in damaged crops, lack of food, and shortage of water. Fatima's stomach ached for a crumb. The hunger that struck her belly made her think she was dying. She was sure she was nothing more than a stick figure. Her body ached from lack of food. She was so hungry, she was afraid she would pass out. All the people in her village who would usually give her food had no food for themselves, much less for her. That is when she saw them, the missionaries. There was a man with dark hair and a beard, and a youthful-looking woman with bright blue eyes, the clear color of the sky. There were 2 children with them, a boy and a girl, a family. Looking at them, Fatima knew that they were American. Her heart began to race. Maybe those people represented the freedom she'd always longed for. Could there be hope for her in America? Suddenly, the man locked eyes with her. He was looking dead at her. Fatima's overwhelming joy quickly turned to overwhelming dread. He probably saw how she thought she looked, a poor, dirty orphan. But with a closer look, Fatima saw something else in the man's eyes, compassion for her. Without hesitation, the man walked over to her. Her heart beat fast. What was happening? What was he going to say? Fatima noticed that the man's wife and their children were falling behind them. When he finally reached her, he knelt down to be eye level with her. "What is your name?" the man kindly asked in Dinka, her language. She answered. He nodded and looked down at his own children. The girl had the same blue eyes as her mother, but her hair was dark like her father's. She looked to be about 6, which was how old Fatima was. "My name is David," the man said. "David Greenland. I'm a missionary." She didn't know what a missionary was, but his words brought hope to her heart. He and his wife began to speak in a language Fatima didn't understand. She didn't know they were speaking English because she had never heard it before. But there was one word she did recognize: America. She would know that word in any language. The woman began to speak, her voice soft and gentle. She looked like the princesses Fatima had always read about in her storybooks, and she liked her instantly. They both looked at each other. "Fatima," the beautiful woman said in a gentle voice, "how would you like to come to America?" The missionary stayed for 3 months. During that time, Fatima and others in her village learned about a God she had never heard of. But he seemed to be kind and gracious, just as the missionaries were. She also learned to speak English. English was a hard language to grasp, but Fatima was learning quickly. She loved to play with the missionaries' children because they taught her English as well. At the end of the 3 months, it was time for Fatima to leave with her new family. During the plane ride to America, Fatima was very quiet. She was afraid. What if this was a mistake? What if these people weren't who they said they were? What if they would take her back to Sudan to beg on the streets again like she had before? But all that fear left her when the plane landed. "Fatima," Mary David's wife announced in English, "we're home." Home it was. She had never seen such beauty. By this time it was early October, and the leaves were turning various shades of red and gold. But one thing was missing: snow. "Where is the snow?" she asked her new siblings, Jared and Ashley. They smiled. "It'll be here really soon." Really soon wasn't enough for Fatima. She wanted to see the snow. She wanted to touch it. The weeks went by, and soon the Greenland family were celebrating a holiday she'd never heard of: Christmas. They sang songs about a little baby in a manger, surrounded by animals. Whoever the baby was, Fatima could relate to him. That was the story of her life. Ever since she arrived in America with her new family, she constantly asked them about the snow. They never got exasperated, but would tell her, "Just be patient, Fatima. It'll come." But today was different. She'd woken up this morning, on the day her new family called Christmas, to the sound of singing and laughter. "Fatima," her new brother Jared whispered, "it's time." "Time for what?" She was confused. "It's time to open presents," he shouted emphatically. "Presents? What were presents?" Her question was soon answered. In the living room was a huge decorated tree covered with lights and sparkly things. Underneath the tree were piles and piles of beautifully wrapped boxes. "Those must be presents," Fatima thought to herself. "Open them," David told her excitedly. Fatima looked at him. Were all these presents for her? They couldn't be. As if on cue, Ashley ran to the tree and picked up a big pink box. Pink was Fatima's favorite color. She handed the box to Fatima. She didn't know what to do. She had never received a present before, and everyone was staring at her. Slowly, tentatively, she tore open the box. As layer after layer of the wrapping paper came off, Fatima's heart beat faster and faster. Suddenly, she gasped. Staring up at her was the most beautiful doll she'd ever seen. She was dressed in a beautiful purple dress, and there was a golden tiara on her head. She was a princess. The best part was that her skin matched Fatima's perfectly. Tears welled up in her eyes. She had never received something so beautiful, so wonderful. Her family embraced her as the tears fell down her face. For the first time in her life, Fatima felt loved and appreciated. She was no longer a poor orphan girl begging on the streets of Sudan. She had a family who loved her. And even better, she was a princess, the princess she always dreamed to be. It was in that moment that something white caught her eye. Something white was falling, and she could see it through the window. What was it, she thought. Was it snow? It had to be. She didn't have time to doubt. Snow, Jared and Ashley exclaimed. They rushed outside. Snow, it was everywhere, on the ground, in the trees, in the air, and falling. Let's make snow angels, Ashley exclaimed. Fatima didn't know what snow angels were, but one thing she did know for sure, miracles happen and her life is just beginning. Thank you.
Hi. So the magazine looks great, right? So I just wanted to say thank you to Professor Dwyer for working so hard to make sure that we can always have such a wonderful place for us as a community of writers. I am on page 33, I think. So when I was selecting poems, I chose this one because in a couple of my classes, I have my students' journal for the first. Hi, Sharon. For the first 6 minutes of class, and I always encourage them to submit, to go through their journals that we do together and submit whatever they decide they would like to. And this one, I wrote in one of those journaling moments in class, and I thought it would be neat to show my students that, this stuff turns into something if you want it to, and I have some students here tonight who know that with me. This one's called Carve Just Right. Pumpkin carving, almost 20 years consecutively. My oldest, 22, his birth, excuse enough for pumpkin patches, hay rides, corn mazes, costumes, carvings. And in those years, 2 more children. So we've been hauling and rolling and digging in our hands and roasting seeds and lighting up porches for a long time. My youngest, 12 now, although no princess or witch, she's gotten good at creativity and makeup, how clever her costumes are. She's moved on to painting pumpkins, but maybe next year she'll carve something cool. Time rolls out year after year, and the years change and enter the world, bumpy as hay rides, directionless as a maze, and sometimes pleasantly simple and carved just right. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eleora Bartsch, and my poem is called Eternal Repose, and it's on page 56. Fall into eternal repose when there is no longer a spark. Everything must come to a close. The midnight ravens and the crows, and the red-breasted robin and the western lark fall into eternal repose, just like the white Cherokee rose on which the cold winter left its mark. Everything must come to a close. Even the creatures of the meadows, knowing their existence is stark, fall into eternal repose. Although men and women oppose it, aspire to further embark, everything must come to a close. Succumb to the veiled shadows, embrace the everlasting dark, fall into eternal repose. Everything must come to a close.
Testing. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach, and the piece I'm going to be doing for you is actually the beginning of a novel that I hope to write. And just before I get started with it, I just wanted to say how I actually started becoming a writer, because I'm actually really new at this. I was actually sitting in the middle of calculus one day, and I realized I was doodling a character, just a face on it. And for whatever reason, I decided he needed a story. So I decided what better person to write the story than the person who designed the character. So I just sat down one day and just slowly started writing, and I realized that anytime I got stressful, I just kept coming back to writing. And I actually ended up switching to becoming an English major because of this. So, because I realized telling stories is something that's a lot of fun, and I love reading other people's stories. So what better way to spend my life? The boy slowly began to stir. Huh? He said, and sat up from lying on the floor. Well, it's about time. Man, you are out forever. As he opened his eyes, the boy realized he was being watched. 3 young men were staring at him as if he had done something wrong. The tallest among them was stocky, but not built. He had long brown hair and incredibly smooth features, though at the moment they were pressed into a scowl. He reminded the boy of what he thought a surfer would look like. The second was the exact opposite. Bald with a small stature, yet muscled, making him look like a linebacker that had been shrunk. He even had the blank look on his face. The last was slightly taller, yet everything else about him was average. Black, ruffled hair at average length, an average build. Even his eyes were a dull, average blue. The only thing that made him stand out were those eyes. While they may have been normal, the look in them was not. They looked crazed, as if the young man had an insane idea that would be suicide, and he couldn't wait to try it. As he looked at them, he also noticed that each seemed to have their own style. The tall one wore what you would expect, a pair of shorts and a fitted t-shirt with a band of some kind on the front. The bald one had on a pair of worn-out old blue jeans and a cut-off white tee. It looked more like he was on his way to a construction company or maybe a farm than being locked up in a warehouse with a bunch of people he didn't know. But the last one, he had the weirdest outfit the boy had ever seen. He wore a pair of red athletic shorts that were in perfect condition, but were at least 2 sizes too small. His shirt was a long-sleeved, heavy cotton with nothing on it. It was solid purple. There were gaping holes where the elbows should be, and the ends of the sleeves were tattered. It looked like it fit well, though. Maybe it was just really old. The boy suddenly realized they were still watching him. What? He said defensively. It was as if they were looking for something in him. Do you know why we're here? Or even where here is? The tall one asked. What? What does he mean where here is? As the boy looked around, he realized he was in a warehouse of some kind. The warehouse was dimly lit, with no windows and few lights inside, casting shadows in every part of the warehouse. There were shelves along the outer walls with bins and containers and boxes stored neatly. And crates. There were crates everywhere, of all different shapes and sizes. Each had a label on its side to tell its contents, but they were all too far away to read. Whatever was held within those boxes, it must be important. But why was he here with all these crates? I can answer that one. Another person stepped out of the shadows towards them. He was only slightly older than them, yet his hair was already gray. While he seemed to be just like anyone else, he had incredibly sharp features. He had a long face with thin lips, a sharp nose, and large eyes. And what magnificent eyes they were! While most would be a muted color of blue or green, his were a bright yellow. It was hard to look at his face without immediately turning to look at his eyes. As he stepped out of the shadows, he exuded a confidence in him that was intimidating. Here was someone who knew how to handle people. But first, he said, I want to know who you all are. Why should we tell you anything? You should be the one explaining, not us. How about we talk when you tell us why you want to know? When you tell us why you want to know, the tall one demanded. I'm Sam. What about you? The one with the crazy eyes said. And the grumpy one is Floyd. The tall man's face became a mask of outrage that his name was given away against his opinion. Why'd you do that? We don't know this guy, and you're already listening to him? Well, I don't exactly know you either. He seems interesting, though. Why not give him a chance? Sam said. The bald one looked confused, like he didn't know what to do, but for fear of being left out, said, I'm Freed. I'd say nice to meet you, but I don't think we know anything about what's going on. Oh yeah, we never got the chance to ask you your name since you slept so long. Who are you? The boy thought about it for a moment. Could he trust these people? He had never met them before, and he had no idea where he was, or why, or how he got there. But, since he didn't know anything about what was going on, he might as well work with these guys to figure something out. Kyle, he said. Oh, so you're one of those silent types, huh? Said Sam. That's cool. So, Wolfie, where are we? Everyone turned to look at Sam. Ah, come on, don't tell me no one else thinks he looks like a wolf. He even has the eyes. When you think about it, Kyle thought, he does look like a wolf. The thought would be funny if they knew who he was. The lupine man smirked, as if the idea amused him. That sounds like a good enough name. It'll have to do. Just call me the Wolf. So, you all wanted to know where you are, right? He looked at each in turn. All of them were nodding to each other, trying to see if any of them already knew. You're in Framingham, Massachusetts. This is a warehouse devoted to keeping old World War II gear. There's a World War II museum over in Natick, and this is where the extras are kept. So, why are we here? Floyd asked. The wolf raised his eyebrows at the question. Is that the most important question you have right now? He asked. Floyd looked at him angrily and said, "Well, what do you expect? We don't know how we got here or why. What do you think we want to know?" Sam looked thoughtful for a moment, then asked, "Why are we meeting in a warehouse for a World War II museum? I mean, of all places, this is kind of interesting, don't you think?" The wolf's eyes lit up at the question. "That," he said, "is what I expect. However, that is a question for you to figure out in your own time. There is another question you should be asking." Everyone stopped to think about it for a moment. Kyle looked around and noticed that none of them had anything in common. Each was a different size, with different looks and different attitudes. But they had to have something in common. What could it be? "Why us?" he asked. Everyone turned to him. "What do you mean?" Freed asked, confused. Kyle looked like he didn't know how to explain, then said, "Well, none of us know each other, but obviously we were chosen for something, right?" The wolf smiled and responded, "Close. You were chosen because of something, but not necessarily for. You are here because I wanted to meet all of you. Not only me, but I wanted all of you to meet each other as well. You see, you were wrong that none of us have anything in common. Each of us is special." "Special?" Freed asked. "What do you mean by special?" Sam laughed nervously and looked terrified. He seemed very tense, almost as if he was on the verge of running away. "What do you think we are, crazy?" The wolf chuckled and said, No, nothing like that. Each of you have abilities that you didn't know you had. You might have tapped them at some point, but you probably assumed it was adrenaline or something similar. You see, everyone here is superhuman. Granted, you are not Superman, but you are more than a normal person. You have stronger internal structures, which allow you to have certain abilities that are stronger than a normal human's. For instance, your bones are stronger, your heart is able to beat faster, your muscles are firmer and able to withstand more tension. So basically, you're able to run faster, jump higher, lift heavier objects, and many other things. It is an ability that very few have. All of them looked skeptical at what the wolf said, except for Sam, who seemed positively elated. "How few?" Freed asked. The wolf looked put off guard for the first time during their brief time together. "You're looking at them." For a moment, everything was silent. No one could believe what they had just heard. "You mean this is it? How is there no one else?" "This is true. How are there so few?" Kyle asked. "I don't know. I'm not sure what causes this, or what its limitations are, or why it has only happened to people who are both young and male, but I can assure you that we are the only superhumans in this country. I was hoping that if we came together, maybe we could find out." "How can you tell us this and expect us to just accept it? Like, hey guys, you're naturally better at just about everything, but no one knows about this, and you're the only ones. And I have no idea why you have this difference, but you do?" "How can we hear this and just accept it?" Kyle asked, incredulous. "You're not better at everything. The strength only affects you physically. Your mind is no better than what it normally would be. As such, your reflexes are unaffected as well. I know this is a lot to take in, but what I am saying is true. I may not know what we can do, but I am sure we can find out if you are willing to come with me." "What do all of you think?" Everyone became pensive, not knowing what to believe, until Sam suddenly shouted, "Are you kidding? This is amazing! We have a gift no one else has! Imagine what we could do with it! Oh man, I gotta learn parkour now. Do you know any limits yet?" The wolf looked taken aback by the sudden enthusiasm. "A few. You can, when focusing hard enough, run upwards of the speed you could on a bike. You could jump the height of a one-story building. Lifting a large amount of weight seems to be something that can't be determined. The amount has always varied for me. That is all I know about our limitations at the moment." Freed did not seem nearly as upbeat as Sam, yet he did not look as skeptical as before. "Well, I guess there are times when I have done something amazing things sometimes," he said, "but I never would have guessed I was different. Why has my doctor never seen this?" The wolf turned to him and said, "Because it requires an incredible amount of focus to be able to activate this extra strength. You won't notice any change occurring, but believe me, it is there. If you do not focus, that strength is not there. Anytime you are not physically active and focused intensely on whatever you are doing, you are just like everyone else. In a doctor's office, you would not be focused on being able to tap that strength, so it is unnoticeable." Floyd suddenly became livid, asking, "But why kidnap us? Why drag us away from our homes under the suspicion that we are superhuman, as you say? And why assume we would give a damn?" The others were choosing not to say anything, but their approval of what Floyd had said was written in their faces. The wolf looked patiently at Floyd and said, "Well, I cannot speak for everyone, but I know that you were hardly dragged from your home. Isn't that right?" Both the anger and the color suddenly drained from Floyd's face. How do you know about that?" he whispered. But the wolf instead answered, "I wanted to meet you all because I was hoping we could find out what makes us what we are. The only way to do that is to come together. I would like to work with all of you to figure out what this difference within us is. And there's no better way to find out than to work together to figure it out. However, I know this is a lot to be putting on you. I think it would be a good idea to meet back here tomorrow at noon. That will give each of you ample time to get a good night's rest and try testing out your powers. As a tip to figuring out how to use it, try finding a straight path where nothing will get in your way, and just start running. Once you start, focus on where you want to be, and you will get there much faster than you should. Now, I have a few provisions for each of you. See these packs?" The wolf gestured to a set of 4 duffel bags set neatly on a nearby crate, each neatly arranged by the numbers 1 through 4 printed on their sides. They were small, barely big enough for overnight supplies. Each was black and unmarked except for their number. Inside each of these are 2 changes of clothes. My apologies for the sizes. I took my best guess. There are also any sort of overnight supplies you may need, along with $100 in cash, in case you need anything. Each of you has a room in the Madison Hotel. It is not too far away, just 10 minutes walking. Tell the man at the front desk who you are, and he will give you your room key. Now, I must bid you good night. I am sure you are anxious to get out there and test what I have said, and I have something to attend to. I would hope to see you all here tomorrow noon." And with that, the wolf casually walked out the front door of the warehouse and left the 4 to themselves. Behind him, they noticed there was no light. It was the middle of the night. For a moment, no one moved. What were they to do? Just start running around like madmen? How do you try to use something you didn't know you had and have no idea how to use it? After a brief moment, Sam began to laugh. "What's so funny?" Kyle asked. "Nothing, that's it? Just go out and do whatever? In a town we aren't familiar with? Oh man, that's too good. I gotta go try this out. And everyone knows the best way to learn is to jump right in, right? Man, I'm starving. I could really go for some pizza now. Anyone else?" Floyd just simply shook his head and walked out into the night. "Okay, so not him. Anyone else? Come on, don't be fun." For a moment, neither of the remaining 2 said anything, then Freed looked up. "Well, I guess I am a bit hungry. Sure, I'll come along." "Sweet," Sam said. "What about you, oh quiet one?" For a moment, Kyle considered it. But the look in Sam's eyes spoke of trouble, and even if he wouldn't admit it out loud, this little man scared him a little. So he said, "No thanks. I'm kinda tired. I think I will try to find that hotel the wolf was talking about." "Suit yourself," Sam replied. "We are off to nab dinner. Oh man, I can't wait to figure this out. This is gonna be so much fun. Come on." "Wait," Freed replied after a moment. "You said nab. What did you mean by that?" Sam just laughed as he stepped out into the night.
Good evening. I'm Kate Lassman, and my poem is on page 58. This poem is an elegy for my father, who was, as the title says, a geologist. Can any words made of only breath and ink truly capture the inscape of the mountains, their violet hue in the pink light of the dawn, the snow atop them like the last street lamp, or, in the clarity of full sunshine, that precise tint of distant evergreen blue? You showed me the mountains, Father, when I was a child, on pebbled alpine trails, around pristine glacial lakes, into aspen woods and pine. I wish I had understood that you were sharing strata of yourself as well. Can any words, made of only breath and ink, truly capture the inscape of a soul? They say we become like what we love, and so you did, with rock-like steadiness, watching protectively over me and orienting me as the mountains in the west. I have never needed, nor have kept, a compass. Nothing phases the mountains, not the fiercest blizzards, nor the most rambunctious children. They endure without complaint eroding rains, and when the clouds or the fog or the depths of a starless night conceal them from view, the mountains remain dependable, like you. They are nevertheless still there.
Good evening. I'm Diane Payne. I'd like to say thank you to Neal, for allowing me to come up and always talk about my photography. And thank you to everyone who was able to put this lovely book together. But I'd also like to extend my thank you for Richard Taylor and Shantae Garrett. They are both my colleagues who unfortunately weren't able to make it tonight. Richard's picture, I Am I, Don Quixote, is on page 32, and Shantae's picture, Butterflower, is on page 41. And my picture, Donut Connection, is on page 57. Donut Connection, Waldorf, is my favorite place to get coffee. It's a great, small, cozy place on Route 5, Leonardtown. I have become a regular there that the ladies who prepare my coffee know that I like a 2 cream, 2 sugar. And the ladies that also work there do a great job of making sure every customer is happy and taken care of. So much so that many customers like to stay to enjoy their donuts and coffee, and then it gives me a great sense of community. Everyone taking time to enjoy each other's company, saying good morning to each other, catching up with the news of the day. And in this particular case, as I was leaving, the sun wasn't up yet, so I walked up close to the sign to capture the beautiful neon lights. And in this case, even though I'm a Nikon girl, I took this picture with my iPhone. In closing, I love capturing older signs like this one because I love the idea of preserving history within my community. Thank you again.
Good evening, I'm Christopher Wilkins. Again, thanks to those who've edited and put this together. Again, you'll find my poem, Imagine That, on page 24. Imagine that. Imagine that one of the gifts reserved for age is death, an adder's mask of slinking shed skins withering, bees fluttering between glazed panes on a Michaelmas spring morning. Another gift is to see in winter, winter's end in summer lakes and sailing ships, pantaloons, warmed cream, desiccated limes, and the fluke of a whale staving a schooner's hull in a glinting sea. Catmint spikes purple as daylilies take their star turn on the lea in July, or on hills far away in a meadow by a grave. And age is woven of days, runs a cliche, aged like a gull scavenging from day to day. A former student of mine, J.R. Rhine, also had a poem in here called Bob Dylan's Shades on page 38, and he said he couldn't be here, but said if I would read the poem, he'd be grateful. So I shall read to you J.R. Rhine's Bob Dylan's Shades. The second of the villanelles a former student of mine, or a current student of mine, has had in this edition. How long behind Bob Dylan's shades? Smoke furls and curls among the glass before a man belies his fame. The corner of the room pervades, imbued with smoke, if so to pass. How long behind Bob Dylan's shades? Visage so cool but starts to jade, will eyes see through and to surpass before a man belies his fame? Caught in the great aesthetical wake, the fans will bend and surge en masse. How long behind Bob Dylan's shades? His words, his voice depict a sage. I wonder if the lore will last before a man belies his fame. But once the petals cease to sway and blades blow back a pompous ass, how long behind Bob Dylan's shades before a man belies his fame?
Hi, my name is Sherbie Carson, and my poem is on page 25. And I'd like to thank Neal and Rachel and everybody else who gives us opportunity to kind of share a piece of ourselves by doing this. And I guess that's part of what this poem is about, is that I realize that sometimes we get caught up in just, sharing the generic, like, how you doing? Oh, I'm great, I'm fine. We're always fine. Everything's always fine. Everything's always great, because we have to keep it positive. And sometimes it isn't always great. And so this poem was about the opportunity to take a long drive and kind of get past just the platitudes about the weather and, sports and kids and vacations and stuff, and just really kind of get to some of the raw pieces that we don't really share. And so I just wanted to honor that opportunity with this poem. It is called Driving Through Jersey. Autumn leaves twirl around us, fall ribbons adrift in chilled anticipation of winter songs. The gentle caress of Pennsylvania maples, yielding to the fractured asphalt of the Jersey Turnpike. This is my home, she said, eyes fixed forward, miles growing longer between exits, as if given the opportunity to escape, weary souls might follow their feet toward softer, brighter streets. For 3 states, we admired the weather, spoke of children, vacations, and dreams. It wasn't until exit 8 to Freehold that I met the little girl who hid from fists and belts flying. In each of the tears that fell slowly, I could taste her salt and the bittersweet memory of a mother's love held down by the weight of bills to pay and men who offered no more than a name and their seed. Her mother's heart, too heavy for flesh to carry, rests beneath the earth and fresh flowers at exit 15. In silence, we knelt down, in grass still damp, and learned that the whole of this life is holding close to one another through the soft budding of spring flowers and the broken winter of Jersey streets.
Hello, my name is Joanne Van Wee. My poem, Like Sand, is on page 47. And I would just piggyback on what Sherbie said about being able to share with people. And when you do find a person you can share with, this poem's about how important that is. It's called Like Sand. It's your soul-like hand that listens, knows the pale shell I formed as a child, the sound you felt when you lifted this whelk out of the sea to answer, not the white noise of the ocean or the illusion of soft blue in waves. You leaned in closer like sand, like what couldn't be shaken loose. The underwater of your heart came in softly like missing air. It pressed over top like layers of the broken sky. And somehow, as it held me, you knew how to listen. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to be here with all of you tonight. I'd like to dedicate my reading of this piece to my incredible sister, Lynn. She stepped into the role of caregiver for our mom, dad, and younger sister with bravery, grace, and wisdom. Mom died 3 years ago. Dad died Monday morning. And all we have left now is Jane. If I could just have one fistful of Lynn's strength, it would be amazing. As it is, I have her undying love, and that breathes life into my everyday. I love you, Lynn. My piece is on page 20. It's called The Scent of Loss. My brother Eddie was killed in the early spring of 1971. He was 11 years old. Mom's tea rose bushes bloomed early that year. Eddie almost got to see them. An emotionally disturbed resident of the Rosemont Extended Care Facility in Baltimore, Maryland, where Eddie lived, forced a bar of soap down his throat. He was supposed to move back home that weekend. Staff got the object out before he choked to death, but not before deadly chemicals made their pungent way into his lungs. He died later that night alone, while Mom and Dad made the long trek to the hospital. It was a difficult decision for Dad and Mom to admit Eddie to Rosemont in the winter of 1969. He was fourth of their 7 children and required special care because he suffered from Prader-Willi syndrome, a neuromuscular disorder. He had grown obese from his constant eating of anything he could get into his mouth, food, cleaning products, or trash. Eddie would wander out of the house and down the street on a whim. Mom did not have enough eyes to keep track of him. They resorted to locking him in his tiny ground floor bedroom and cut the door in half so the top could stay open. This made them feel like they were not completely cutting him off from the rest of the family. As his disease progressed, he required a full-body brace. Eddie fought like a trapped lion not to wear that thing. He needed 24/7 care. Mom and Dad could not provide it. Eddie did not always hate Rosemont. At first, it was an ordeal to convince him to come home for weekend visits. Rosemont was populated with kids like Eddie. The employees were extremely competent, gentle, and kind. Within a year, Eddie dropped almost all of his extra weight. Slowly, the faces of Rosemont's workforce and inhabitants changed. Staff with years of experience were let go in favor of inept college kids who could be paid far less. Children with forensic and oppositional behavior issues were added to the resident population. Personnel often neglected and sometimes abused patients. Through disregard, Eddie lost even more pounds, was pale and rail thin. Particularly cruel workers forced him to crawl around the community room floor, holding a soda bottle under his chin. Eddie wanted to come home. 2 days before he was due to come home, irresponsible employees ushered a gaggle of boys down the corridor into the communal showers. They were not supervising the bunch, and Eddie was attacked. I remember fragments of his funeral, like a collage of loss. The woman sitting in front of me wore a tremendous black and white hat with feathers and netting, creating an obstructed view of my brother. Her perfume was musky and distracting. Mom walked with me through the viewing line and explained that Eddie was sleeping until God resurrected him and we would see him again in paradise. When I pulled my chin over the edge of his casket, it looked like Eddie was breathing. I begged Mom not to bury him alive. He was dressed in our older brother's dark gray suit, and his fluff of platinum hair wept against the white satin pillow beneath his head. There seemed to be enough room for me to climb in next to his fragile frame. Eddie looked so weak, and I imagined bullies overpowering him while he showered. And there were the flowers everywhere. I was almost drunk, at least dizzy, from their aroma that forced its way up my nose and down my throat. Is this what Eddie felt? Am I going to die too? He was buried in Fort Lincoln Cemetery back when people were still allowed to watch them lower the casket into the grave. I have a picture of Mom standing beside the swell of earth, softened by baskets of flowers laid on their sides. She wore a periwinkle dress over her ample body, belly swollen with her last birth of twins, and a faithful strand of pearls around her mole-ridden neck. The fragrance of freshly disturbed earth reminded me of days when Eddie still lived at home, and the family planted a garden out back, behind the apple tree with its sweet blossoms. There was a giant clock at the entrance, fashioned out of shrubbery, with hands of petunias and begonias. The groundskeeper could change the time with seasons of daffodils, verbena, and mums. I wondered what time it would be that winter, when most everything shriveled in on itself, and if Eddie would finally see the tea roses that bloomed late in the spring of 1971. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, everyone who read. Can we have one more hand for everybody who read tonight? Fabulous. Just absolutely great. Very, very good work. Thank you all. So that's it. Join us for reception in the back, cookies and punch. Take extra copies of the magazine back with you. They make great holiday presents. And you can check the website, and we'll see you back in the spring. Thanks a lot.